The last but one segment, Nigeria at 57, in search of a rebirth, or in need of a rebirth, actually. This time around, we're talking about social infrastructure, and we have a real high-powered panel here to discuss social infrastructure. Now, everything we've talked about up till this point in the program has dovetailed us into this, and this is where the things that concern the everyday man, the issue of roads, housing, power supply, and so on, all come in. This is social infrastructure. And to discuss this, of course, I'm being joined, sitting directly next to me is the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina. Thank you so much for being with us. Sitting next to him is Mrs. Juliet Benite, who's a member of the Institute of National Transformation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
We also have here Dr. Nick Idoko, who is a security analyst, but his main area is public policy analysis. Thank you so much for being with us. Sure. And finally, but definitely not the least, is Mr. Joe Abba, who is the former executive of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good evening.
I think I should start with you, even though I introduced you last. A lot of people have said that the state of the nation's social infrastructure today, to a large extent, has been the result of a policy problem. Inconsistencies in policies. Governments start one project or the other. They end, they don't either properly hand it over to the next government, or there are already issues about that project, so when the next government comes, there's no incentive to continue with it. How fair is this as a comment?
I think it's fair to the extent that it is one of the problems. It's not the only problem. Nigeria is not rich enough as a country. And therefore, most of the infrastructure we have is simply insufficient. And when you're growing, when your population is growing at a rate of about 5% per annum, then every single piece of infrastructure you complete is already too small by the time you commission it. So there's that aspect of it. We simply don't have enough to provide all the infrastructure we need for the population that we have. It doesn't help when you then have a culture of waste in the system. It doesn't help when you have a culture of corruption, particularly in procurement and in the way you handle contracts. It doesn't help when you don't have a strong monitoring and evaluation process that actually confirms that what is paid for is delivered. And so all of these things are coupled with what you talked about, the policy issue of a lack of continuity, a lack of long-term development planning. All of these things contribute, but there isn't one single factor. It's a combination of factors.
Dr. Idoko, I remember, I believe it was, I think towards the inception of the administration of President Buhari, a study, a group was set up, a committee was set up to look at the issue of abandoned projects. And I think it came up with the figure of something in the region of 30,000 plus abandoned projects of various types and various levels and so on across the country, which speaks to what Mr. Abba called the culture of waste. Yes. Can we put this down just to the culture of waste? Is it only a question of waste?
Well, I think it's much more than just a culture of waste. It is also about planning. It's also about abuse of processes. It's also about personal ego. People want to take credit for what they have put in place rather than what others have put in place. And for that reason, they don't want to continue with the projects that have been started by a different administration. Therefore, you have projects abandoned all over the place. Of course, the issue of corruption is there, is rife. When money is budgeted for a particular project and the money is not spent rightly or embezzled, that project will never be completed. Therefore, it will be abandoned. And there is no recovery process where those who abandon the projects will be called to account. So accountability issue is there also. So a lot of factors come to play. And there is also the issue of weakness of institutions. Who regulates these things? So who is responsible? for these things. So if you don't have institutions that regulate, that are accountable, and if you don't have a system where people who abuse the processes are brought to account, then these things are there. Of course, the culture of waste is also part of the problem. We are given to wastages, and nobody is called to book.
Now, Mrs. Benite, I see that you're a member of the Institute of National Transformation, which gives me the impression that you're actually one of those doing something about changing this, this situation that the last two speakers have described. What exactly are you doing?
Well, one of our observations over the years in the Institute is that we have realized that there's a leadership gap. We have leaders. People need to understand there's a difference between having a leader who occupies a position or a seat at any level, not just government, and the concept of leadership. Leadership is that ability to direct a path and create solutions and understand the problems and also how to benchmark the solutions. And one of the things that we keep making the mistakes over the years as Nigerians is that we haven't learned the act of leadership. We need to understand, like everything that have been said about the waste culture. When you hear the word waste culture, where is that coming from? Where do you nip it in the bud? How do you destroy a waste culture? Because you can't keep talking about the problem and you're not driving a process or a policy or a discussion or the narrative within the sectors, whether at the House of Assembly, whether within the society or at the presidency, at the governorship, every level. Why is there waste? Because somehow within ourselves, when we say we have the culture of waste, we're actually indicting ourselves. Invariably, a mother probably is not teaching the child how to keep that remaining food on the plate and learning it through the years, through the university level, how is waste managed. If someone can manage waste at X point, definitely when it gets to government, you see money that is everywhere, you use it as you want. And there's no accountabilities. We have not designed enough effective laws that can checkmate whether governors, local government level leadership, or any other leadership. And so we keep talking about this. And for us as the Institute, what we are saying that we need to raise value-based leaders, men who understand that value supersedes your greed or your need. You need to understand that this is a national issue. This is our nation. It is not mine because I'm the one seated here today. I am called to provide that leadership. And in my lack of providing leadership, I give someone the opportunity to take money and get away with it, and there is no checkmate. What are the things that we need to check and balance? We know that internationally people do contracts with us as Nigerians, and they put all sorts of measures to ensure that if Nigeria breaches the contract at X, Nigeria will be paid these penalties. What are we doing to that man who is wasting? There's too much levity. There's too much freedom of doing the wrong things and getting away with it. We're talking about the issues of law. Even within the Justice Department, have we progressed even in law? Because the issue is that there are things to put in place for the waste to be curtailed. There are civic studies and education to be given to the younger generation. Because here you are, that someone is given a position. I mean, I have a friend, the accountant ran away with her money. And he dropped a note. So these are issues that is ingrained, has become ingrained. Why? Because of leadership. The inability of either family, the educational sector, the political sector. There is no check and balances. There are no laws that are holding. There's too much talk. We go to court and forever the number of judges we have is not enough in comparison to the population growth, the number of courts. There are a lot of things that are happening that as in leadership, you go back to ground zero and start discussing, okay, what is feeding that? What is feeding that? How do we now raise either laws, policy, the discussion around that to create solution?
Thank you. Mr. Additional, I'm not putting you on the hot seat, but you've heard what the three previous speakers have spoken about. If this has been the situation, and I'm by no means saying it is, but if this has been the situation up until the time the administration, which is there now and which you serve, took over, what is being done to change this?
Well, I really agree with it. The diagnosis they came up with is quite correct, and it has persisted over the years and run through many administrations. And I believe that this administration has learned a lot of lessons from what happened. For instance, look at the Mambila power project. It's been on the card since 1972. Now it's taking off under this administration. Look at most of the things this administration is doing, 60 to 70% of them were initiated by previous governments. That shows you that in the past, a government will come and it will say, this is not our project. And it will discard what was being done and start fresh ones. And so you have many half-completed, quarter-completed, abandoned projects. See the Abuja-Kaduna Rail project. It was done up to maybe 60, 70% by the last administration. This administration came, completed it, and inaugurated it. But then you still find some people shouting, oh, they are claiming credit for what the past administration started. Then it shows that there is a mentality in Nigeria that makes governments not want to complete what the
others. Because I think one of our previous speakers did mention that it's my project.
It's my project.
So I would rather commission it uncompleted than allow someone else complete it and then commission it.
Exactly. But this administration is not going that way at all. It's just doing what needs to be done for the good of the country.